morning, everybody. Welcome to our Metro Area Snapshot series covering San Antonio. As a native Texan, I am super excited that we are able to deliver our Metro Area insights to yet another Texas jurisdiction, and especially excited to be in San Antonio, where my sister lives. Today's speakers include myself. I'll kick us off. And we will be joined by our project manager, Joanna Kaufman, as well as Samantha Yee, who is one of our dual analysts covering both the zoning text and the geospatial sides of the project. With that, I'm going to get right into the table of contents because I know we just have a short time today. First, I'm going to talk about why the National Zoning Atlas is made. What are we trying to do with this project, and why are we building it? Then Sammy is going to come in and talk about how it's made. We have a unique methodology that has been honed over the last 5 years, and we've applied that methodology to San Antonio at the level of the zoning district, and she's going to tell you all about it. Next, we are going to do a quick demo about how you can use the National Zoning Atlas, and we will zoom in to San Antonio and provide a couple of examples using the filters there. Finally, we're going to get to how San Antonio zones, drawing the insights from our map, and we will be comparing a couple of other metro areas we've completed in Texas, namely the Dallas and Austin areas. So if anybody here is from those areas and wants to take a peek at how they stack up to San Antonio, section 4 is what you want to watch out for. And then finally, I will come back around to talk about what kinds of applications we can have with in San Antonio of the National Zoning Atlas, showing you a couple of examples of what we have used the National Zoning Atlas for in other places. So first things first, what is the National Zoning Atlas? If you got here today, you probably registered through our website, and you probably have a basic understanding of what we're trying to do with the Atlas, which is to create an online interactive map documenting information about zoning. So what is zoning? It is local government rules governing land uses, and land uses including not just the actual use of the property, but also what can be built on it, as well as how a lot may be developed. So uses, structures, and lots, that's what zoning covers. We are taking key information about how zoning works, and then we are putting that information online so that everybody can see it. I see some folks from municipal government on the call today. So you are the stewards of zoning information at the local level. In some cases, local governments don't always make that information accessible. So we are taking that information from local zoning texts, local zoning maps, and putting it all together in a way that we feel like people can more easily understand all the technical details that go behind zoning. So why do we care so much about zoning? Why are we building a map that just shows information about zoning? As I just say on the next slide, we care about zoning because it has pretty significant impacts on how we live. And that includes not just where we live and what kind of housing we can have access to, but also where we work, how much we drive, whether we are benefiting or hurting the environment with our development patterns, how much we can access food, and a whole range of things. Because zoning tells us what we can do where in many, many places across the country, zoning has really, again, an outsized and, in fact, little understood impact on how we occupy our world. So you'll see this map again in the presentation, but I just wanted to provide you a quick overview of the map itself. We have completed 17 states now that we've just posted, except for a few jurisdictions where we have some Freedom of Information Act requests out in Wyoming. We've just polished off Wyoming, making it our 17th state on the Atlas. As our presenters will show, the map has 3 colors at the national scale: white, purple, and gray. Those areas in white are areas we haven't gotten to yet. The areas in purple are areas that we've confirmed have zoning. And then the areas in gray are those areas that we have confirmed do not have zoning. So take a look at Texas, which is where we are today, and you'll see a lot of purple in the Dallas area, a lot of purple in the San Antonio area, a lot of purple in Austin. You see some purple down in Corpus Christi and some purple in the Houston area, but not Houston itself because Houston does not have zoning. But a lot of Texas is unzoned. And that's because, for the most part, Texas does not allow its counties to zone. So all those unincorporated areas have turned gray in Texas. And we're going to get to the details of how that actually ends up working in the San Antonio metro area, which has a big population, but also has a number of county governments. So what that map shows us is the national progress so far. The jurisdictions published to the map, we have more than 10,000 jurisdictions published to the map, several hundred in Texas, many, many others across the country, encompassing about 60% of the population, 62% of the land area, and totaling over 100,000 zoning districts. We've read almost 1.2 million pages of code, and that's just text after text of local jurisdiction, one after the other. And here to tell us about how that process works and what reading all of those pages of code actually results in is Sammy. So Sammy, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sammy, a zoning and geospatial analyst at the NZA. I've analyzed zoning data in a number of states, including California, Colorado, Kansas, and Missouri. And I'd just like to take a moment to briefly explain the NZA methodology. So, analysis begins by identifying jurisdictions. These are cities, counties, and towns with zoning authority. Here we see some of the 62 jurisdictions with the right to exercise zoning in the San Antonio New Braunfels CPSA. Once we have identified that a jurisdiction is zoned, we collect the two main components of a complete zoning code, the zoning text and the zoning map. Both are necessary. While the zoning ordinance contains a lot of key information, we also need to know where its provisions apply throughout the jurisdiction and how much land is allocated to each use. Here we see the zoning text and map for the city of Cibolo. Each jurisdiction with zoning is made up of zoning districts with different regulations. Here's a screenshot of the 26 zoning districts in Cibolo as they appear in the NZA editor. You can see the district names along with the type of district, ranging from primarily residential to non-residential. Most districts in this particular list are base districts, which are the base classification on the zoning map. But there are also overlay districts, which are districts that overlap one or more base districts to provide additional regulations in line with the objective of the overlay. Here we've highlighted the FM 78 Mixed Use Overlay District. With a complete code, team members then follow two work streams per jurisdiction, the text analysis and the geospatial analysis. The text analyst first identifies the list of districts and logs key data points using the NZA's standardized methodology. The geospatial analyst then locates its zoning districts and, depending on the available format, either digitizes a static PDF map or standardizes existing geospatial data. The two workstreams work in hand to create the zoning districts as they appear for each jurisdiction on the atlas. Zoning analysts record up to 200 data points for each jurisdiction, or each district, Key elements include the types of housing permitted, from single-family to 4 or more multifamily housing, and whether these homes are allowed as of right or require a public hearing. Analysts also log minimum lot sizes, setbacks, building heights, parking requirements, affordable housing provisions, accessory dwelling regulations, and much more. A unique aspect of zoning within the state of Texas is that municipalities may exercise zoning powers that go beyond their jurisdictional boundary. The scope of these extraterritorial jurisdictions, or ETJs, vary by population and can be anywhere from half a mile to 5 miles from a jurisdiction's limits. The image on the left is the zoning map for Von Ormy, Texas. The ETJ is the opaque area surrounding the city. Von Ormy did not include any zoning in the ETJ, so we did not map it. When there is zoning in the ETJ, we log it on the atlas for the incorporated municipality. On the on the right of the zoning atlas map for summer is the map for Somerset, Texas, which does not include areas outside which does include areas outside of the map jurisdictional boundary. So now that we've covered the basics of our methodology, we're going to walk through how to use the interactive map and get the most out of its features. And if you'd like to follow along with me, you can head to zoningatlas.org/atlas. First, we'll take a look at the map on a national scale. In the Legend and Layer Options box in the upper left corner, you have a few options to toggle on and off additional layers and features. You can also change the base map here. You can see the legend highlights the zone status of a given jurisdiction, with purple representing zoned jurisdictions and gray representing unzoned jurisdictions. The areas shown in white have not yet been analyzed and integrated into the NZA. If you have the tribal land and protected land layers toggled on, you will also see the green and green-brown layers. This is more prominent in the western states. Now we can use the zoom and filter box to explore a chosen geography. When Texas is selected in the state dropdown, the map zooms to the state. Now that we're zoomed to Texas, we're able to get even more specific with our geography selection. We can select San Antonio, New Braunfels in the metro micropolitan area dropdown, Bexar County in the county dropdown, and finally San Antonio in the jurisdiction dropdown. As you can see on your screens, the map zoomed to San Antonio and outlined the jurisdiction in black. Please note that you can only select one jurisdiction at a time. At this scale, notice that the legend updates to only zoning district type. Light purple areas include primarily residential districts, dark purple areas indicate mixed with residential districts, and tan areas indicate non-residential districts. These zones typically allow things like industrial manufacturing, airports, or open space. Some of the most valuable insights from the map can be uncovered using the Atlas filters. So now let's apply filters to the map. The Show Me Where People Can Build box has options for quick filtering. For example, it can show you where missing middle housing or apartments are allowed. We toggled on the single family homes filter, and you can see that the map lost some color. Areas remain colored in when the criteria satisfies the selected filters. In other words, this means you can build a single family home anywhere the map is light or dark purple. In the lower right, in the lower right corner, the filtering results box calculates the zoned acres and the number of districts that satisfy the filtering criteria. And according to these results, 77% of zoned acres in San Antonio or 50% of zoning districts allow single-family housing by right. Note that the filtering results only apply calculations for the single selected jurisdiction. Going back to the Show Me Where People Can Build box at the top left corner, we toggled where apartments with 4 or more units can be built, and you can see the change in the locations that meet the criteria. You can see that the percentages change in the filtering results box. 25% of zoned acres or 37% of zoning districts. The sharp disparity between where single-family and multifamily housing are permitted is readily apparent if we toggle back and forth between these two filters. Now let's take a look at the Advanced Filters box. You can use it for selecting more specific filtering criteria, like whether 1, 2, 3, or 4 plus family housing is also subject to a public hearing, minimum parking requirements, or height caps, among other options. We've selected criteria where one family housing is allowed as of right and has a minimum lot size of 2,000 square feet. And according to the filtering results, 61% of zoned acres satisfies this criteria. With that being said, I will now pass it to Joanna.
Thanks, Sammy. Now that we're more familiar with the atlas and database, let's examine how the San Antonio New Braunfels CBSA zones. To clarify, a CBSA, or core-based statistical area, is a census term that describes regional urban areas. As mentioned earlier, the San Antonio CBSA comprises 62 jurisdictions. Of the total 62 jurisdictions, 14 do not have zoning and 2 have a missing code. None of the eight unincorporated counties have zoning. Our team analyzed over 5,500 pages of zoning ordinance text and logged up to 200 data points for each of the 689 districts that make up the zone land of the San Antonio CBSA. We found an average of 15 districts per jurisdiction and an average of 120 pages per zoning code. This is less than the national average of 180 pages of zoning codes per jurisdiction. Now let's break down the share of land categories across the San Antonio CBSA. 88% of land across the CBSA is unzoned. However, most of the CBSA's population lives within the 9% of land that is subject to zoning. The remaining 2% of land is protected. Of the 9% zone land across the CBSA, most of it allows for housing. That's broken down into 3 types of zoning districts. We say that primarily residential districts are those that are primarily focused on providing housing. While 63% of zone land in the San Antonio CBSA is primarily residential, about 23% of zone land is classified as mixed with residential. This is an unusually high percentage of mixed with residential lands that allow both residential use and non-residential uses. Lastly, only 15% of zoned land across the state is limited to non-residential uses such as industrial, institutional, or open space. Now let's take a moment to dig into the zoning specifics of residential development in the San Antonio CBSA. For this presentation, we define multifamily housing as residences with 4 or more units. This table shows the share of residential land zoned for different types of housing. From left to right, there are columns for 1, 2, 3, and 4 or more family housing. The darker blue represents the percentage of housing allowed by right. The lighter blue requires a public hearing, and gray is prohibited. 88% of land allowing residential development across the CBSA allows 1 unit per lot by right. That means single-family housing can be built on most residential land in the San Antonio New Braunfels CBSA. Now compare this to the 2-family column, which drops down to 11% allowed by right, as 7% allowed is subject to a public hearing. Now, 4 or more unit apartments are only allowed by right on 19% of the CBSA's residential land. We see they're allowed on another 7% of land after a public hearing, but these discretionary legal processes add cost, time, and uncertainty that can discourage projects altogether. So in many cases, public hearings can, in effect, function as a form of prohibition. Speaking of prohibition, the large gray bar shows the most common approach to 4 or more family housing in the CBSA. That is to say, multifamily housing is prohibited entirely on 74% of residential land across the CBSA. This slide shows comparisons of permitted housing units between CBSAs in the state of Texas. Our Snapshot tool, which we'll explain more about shortly, allows you to easily review key zoning statistics for different geographies at a glance. Looking at the dark blue bar, you can see all 3 CBSAs allow more one-family housing on residential lands compared to multifamily housing. The San Antonio CBSA allows the highest percentage of one-family housing without a public hearing on residentially zoned lands. The Austin and San Antonio CBSAs both allow about the same amount of 4 or more family housing at 18 and 19% respectively. Dallas allows the least amount of multifamily housing on 9% of their residentially zoned lands. All three regions largely prohibit multifamily housing. Let's turn to another important zoning regulation, minimum lot sizes. These rules set the smallest amount of land on which a home can be built. Lot sizes are regulated in terms of either square feet or acres. But these minimums can often be quite large, which effectively mandates unsustainable land-intensive development patterns that fuel sprawl, drive up housing costs, and limit who can afford to live in a community. As a quick note, for this presentation, we use 40,000 square feet and 1 acre interchangeably because 40,000 is such a common minimum lot size that it's sometimes referred to as a builder's acre. A big round number like 40,000 simplifies calculations and it rolls off the tongue easier than the true acre size of 43,560 square feet. But in effect and intention, they're basically the same. This donut chart shows the breakdown of minimum lot size requirements for single-family zone land across the CBSA. The darker the green, the larger the required lot area. Most land allowing single-family housing requires minimum lots of 10,000 square feet or less. While there's a range of lot sizes represented here, this CBSA actually has some of the smaller minimum lot sizes we've seen. Districts with large lot sizes are typically agricultural, rural, or resource protection type districts that may allow limited residential uses. Here's a comparison of minimum lot size requirements for single-family zones in the San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin CBSAs. More than half of the land in single-family zones in all three of the CBSAs have small or no lot size requirements. Over a quarter of the districts in the Dallas CBSA require minimum lots of 80,000 square feet or more. For context, that is about 1.5 football fields. Dallas is the largest metro area of the three by land mass, encompassing more than 5.5 million acres. It has much more land devoted to large lot zoning than San Antonio. Up next are accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. These are secondary homes allowed on the same lot as a primary residence. ADUs are gaining popularity as a cheaper, flexible, and meaningful way to expand housing options in communities across the country. This donut shows ADU permissions on single-family land zoned across the CBSA. The darkest orange is the most permissive, lightest orange is the least permissive, and gray is prohibited. ADUs are allowed on 79% of single-family land in the CBSA, 11% require a public hearing, and are prohibited on 10% of land. Most ADUs have some form of occupancy restriction. This could mean the occupancy of the ADU is restricted to an employee or family member. The property owner may be required to occupy the primary unit, or renters may be prohibited from occupying the ADU. Understanding occupancy requirements is important because onerous occupancy restrictions may limit the incentive to build ADUs as well as their feasibility and endurance. Again, here's a comparison between the San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin metros. The San Antonio metro allows the most ADUs by right on single-family zone land. ADUs are allowed on 79% of one-family zones, and ADUs with occupancy restrictions are allowed on 51% of lands. As shown in this donut chart, occupancy restrictions are common in all three CBSAs. The Austin CBSA allows the least amount of ADUs. Finally, let's look at parking mandates. Parking consumes valuable land and can be expensive to build, making it an important regulation to track because those added costs can deter new housing. In the San Antonio CBSA, 72% of residential land has rules requiring off-street parking. These regulations apply across our 1, 2, 3, and 4 or more family housing treatments. Now I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you, Sammy, for your presentation as well. I am batting cleanup today. So, as Joanna said, my first order of business is to point you to where you can create snapshots, just like the ones that she showed, those graphic elements that really distilled out the summary of all of the painstaking, detailed district by district work that Sammy described. So the website is zoningatlas.org/snapshots. You can also get to it from the header on our main page. And this is what you'll see when you look for a snapshot. You'll see a drop down. Here we've selected Texas, and we have all the jurisdictions that come up in Texas. And you can see we've scrolled down to San Antonio. You can also select by county or metropolitan area or state. So if, for example, you wanted to look at the San Antonio metropolitan area, you would drop down on the metropolitan areas, drop down to San Antonio, and you would see all 62 jurisdictions summary stats in what is presented. The next slide kind of shows you how this works. So the image on the left is the jurisdiction zoning snapshot showing just San Antonio. In the middle, we've got the county snapshot, and on the right, we have the metro area snapshot. And looking at each of these three snapshots and remembering back to what Joanna showed you on each of these graphics, we can do a very quick comparison. On the left, you see San Antonio. That first line tells us it has 451 pages of zoning code just in San Antonio and 84 zoning districts. That's our jurisdiction snapshot. Going over to the county, we see 27 jurisdictions, and then again to the metro area, 62 jurisdictions with that 5,000 plus pages of zoning text snapshot, as well as 667 zoning districts. It's the second line, the yellow and green and gray line, that I want you to look at next. These are the categories of land. As you saw in one of the earlier slides, the yellow represents zoned land. And again, San Antonio is entirely zoned. You see that in the snapshot on the left. When you look at the county snapshot, a little more land is unzoned than zoned. And then when you go to the whole metro area, when you're including all the counties in the metro area, you're seeing a lot of gray there. And as Joanna said, that is largely land that is less populated than the 9% of land that is zoned, certainly less densely populated than San Antonio as you get further out into the more rural counties. But this paints a picture of a metro region that's fairly consistent with what we see across Texas, which again, a lot of land in Texas remains unzoned. Just skipping down to those blue bars, you can just do one last comparison, which is the housing units allowed with the 1, 2, 3, and 4 family columns. Interestingly, this stays pretty consistent as you go between San Antonio, the county, and the metro area. Again, as was said earlier, this is an unusual metropolitan area because of its consistencies in its permissiveness related to housing and its relatively small minimum lot sizes. So keep that in mind as you are delving through our snapshots. San Antonio and the metro area is pretty unique when it comes to metro areas of its population and size. So taking all this, what can we do with things like the snapshots in our map? One of the things that we've done in other places is to understand residential segregation. So this report from Connecticut is an example. We used zoning data from the Connecticut Zoning Atlas, which was the first state that we completed in the Zoning Atlas, to understand how zoning correlates with housing affordability, with income distribution, and with separation of people on the basis of race, ethnicity, and wealth levels. And as you might guess, it found exclusionary zoning was correlated with whiteness, wealth, and high education levels. We can do more of that, especially in places outside of Connecticut, which have very different land patterns, including Texas. We have also done reports using the zoning data to understand flood risk, climate risk. We did a report with the region, really, they spearheaded the report, the Regional Plan Association based in New York City, about sea level rise in New York City and flood risk. The idea behind that report is, where are we zoning in places that don't make any sense? Are we doing that potentially in the San Antonio region? Of course, in the Central Texas region, there's a lot of issues related to water, water quality, water planning, aquifer management, and so on. So you can try to understand from a zoning standpoint, how do our land use rules help us have good solutions when it comes to all of those water related issues? How is zoning actually hampering it? Our data can help to illustrate that in Central Texas. I'll also just flag for any media on the call. We certainly help people who work in journalism, whether they're journalists, reporters, or opinion writers, providing them with information that can help to inform their coverage of land use issues. So if you are a member of the media, you're welcome to visit our media page. The URLs for all of these, by the way, are at the bottom of the screen. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we have a related project called the National Zoning Atlas, and it is online at preservationatlas.org. I'm very excited to announce that the Preservation Atlas will be coming to the Texas border, covering hopefully all of the border counties between El Paso and Brownsville, which is where my parents were born. And I am very interested in understanding the nature of our historic designations up and down the border. San Antonio being so close to the border and really being part of the extended border may eventually be a part of this, may even be a part of our first batch of Texas preservation data. But that project is logging where we are designating historic properties, how we are regulating them from the local commission standpoint, from a state review standpoint, from federal reviews like 106 and tax credit programs. So if you don't know anything about preservation, if you know a lot about preservation, I encourage you to visit our atlas there, where we've covered so far Connecticut and Nevada. We're in Virginia right now, and DC. And again, we are coming soon to Texas. With all the rich history in San Antonio, I do hope you keep an eye on that project. So I'll just close by saying the zoning atlas, back to the zoning atlas, can support data-driven planning and advocacy. I really, really hope that you use it, you get your local, regional, and statewide decision makers to use it, to deploy it, to have better land use planning. If you need to be in touch with us, we encourage you to email us, to follow us on our various social media. And with that, I will start with questions, and feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I should have said that at the very beginning. I often forget to do that. So I will ask right now for Joanna and Sammy to come back on their videos. And I'm going to ask this first question about something that we glossed over in the presentation a bit, which is, how do we access information from local jurisdictions? So in the San Antonio region, we have San Antonio, which is great, has information available online and accessible, but we also had a lot of small jurisdictions that maybe didn't have zoning codes accessible. So maybe either one of you feel free to answer this one. What has been your experience in trying to get information from smaller jurisdictions? Again, we see a lot of small jurisdictions in Texas, but we also do across the country as well.
I can take this question.
Perfect.
Yeah, so a lot of the times it's if we're unable to find anything online, first we'll try to find like a phone number and phone in and call and ask if there is a code or map available. And if that's not the case, then we can also submit something called a FOIA request, which is just like a formal request to the jurisdiction for the documents, since zoning ordinances are public information that is supposed to be accessible to the public. So yeah, going the FOIA request route is one of the ways that we do it.
And Joanna, from a project management standpoint, once we get those codes, how do you assign out work? How do you view our team as working together? So Sammy is a all-in-one zoning analyst and GIS analyst. How can you maybe talk a little bit more about the team members that actually have come to build this atlas, who they are and where they're located?
Yeah, so we have a team. I've like lost track of how many. I want to say it's over 10, less than 20. With a variety of backgrounds. We have some team members that have worked as professional planners. We have some team members that have graduated from planning adjacent programs. But all share, I think, a passionate interest in zoning. As Sarah mentioned earlier in the presentation, our work is bifurcated between digitizing zoning maps and then evaluating the zoning text, the zoning ordinance, and interpreting those regulations through our methodological framework. So we assign the work out. So we'll have zoning analysts, GIS analysts, and then dual analysts who are capable of doing both forms of analysis. And so we assign the zoning text analysis to the zoning analysts. The map analysis varies. If the map is already digitized, which we do see that in many larger jurisdictions, that makes the work that much simpler. But if the map is static, so if there's just a PDF map, the quality of that varies. And so we even have to have our analysts hand draw the map. So a lot of these maps, it very well may be the first time these maps have been digitized. So I think that's exciting actually when we, are able to get our hands on these regulations that are that haven't seen the light of day in a really long time. And because of that, we've developed like a very large repository. We didn't really talk about that much, but I think that's one of the amazing things about this project is we've become a central repository for zoning regulations across the country.
Great. And shifting to another topic, so that's a methodology topic. I maybe want to turn to this question of what can we glean from the zoning atlas in a place that is growing. And so maybe I'll ask Sammy. San Antonio is growing. It's one of the fastest growing places in the country. It's been seeing more and more population, more and more in-migration. How does a region that is growing as quickly as San Antonio use the zoning atlas to inform its future growth, or what kinds of zoning strategies might the region and its local governments look to help to accommodate that growth?
Yeah, I'd say that using the atlas, going back to the snapshot examples, that can just give you a quick glance of um, how much multifamily housing is permitted. And I believe in the presentation we saw that most of the large regions in Texas, like the San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas area, largely prohibit multifamily housing. So I'd say like the quickest way that these jurisdictions can accommodate for this growth is getting rid of maybe the public hearing requirement or the prohibition of multifamily housing in these areas.
Joanna, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of similar to what Sammy said. So there's definitely a predominant uh bias towards single family housing. So I think that that form of development um will be the simplest in certain cases type of development to be built in a lot of these places. So that, can lead to sprawl and all sorts of unanticipated impacts. So as Sammy said, I think um, allowing for a diversity of housing types may help just in long-term planning have more higher quality of life environments where you're not dealing with certain issues just like housing or strain on utilities, et cetera. I mean, I hope we're all kind of well versed with some of these impacts associated with sprawl.
Thanks for that. And I think I have time for one last question, which is in addition to all of the policy areas that the National Zoning Atlas might inform, we also, I think, have something to say about best practices at the local level in terms of just keeping zoning codes accessible and available and understandable to the public. I was hoping that I might ask one or both of you to share the best practices that we hope jurisdictions, as we continue to work through the 33,000 local governments in this country, how we would like to see them store their zoning codes, make them accessible, and so on. So I'll just open the floor to either of you, and I think after that we will close.
I can start. I'd say one of the best practices is just having the code and map linked directly under like a planning page or community development page on a jurisdiction's website. I notice the most easiest codes to navigate are the ones that are integrated in Unicode or AM Legal. Those are just online websites where the code is interactive and you can click through the sections pretty easily. And I'd say another practice within the actual zoning code is whether or not whether or not public hearings are required and having that clearly listed in like a table for different processes and things like that. So yeah, just having things laid out in a table is really helpful. Um, yeah. And I don't know if Joanna wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah. So we are now moving on to doing a lot of updates for jurisdictions. We started this project over 3 years ago. And in a lot of larger cities, zoning is constantly being amended, updated, changed. Uh, it makes it really helpful, or it simplifies our work when there's clear list of what the ordinance amendments are, clear list of rezones. And so having that information is very helpful. Um, I think in our work, we've also noticed that there tends to be a lot of discrepancies between um, zoning maps and zoning text. We know that these are documents that evolve over time, but just if jurisdictions are mindful of what these discrepancies are and having some sort of clear guidance on how to navigate discrepancies, we understand that um, getting amendments passed, getting documents updated, it takes a lot of time. But I think just having a little bit of explanation goes a long way because we end up having to send emails, make phone calls, and sometimes, we have to end up talking to people up the organizational change because even lower level staff don't quite understand what's going on. So I just think, making sure that it's clearly listed is really helpful, not just to us, but I think the general public and decision makers as well.
Great. Well, Joanna, you get the last word. Sammy, thank you so much for your contributions. Joanna as well. This has been a great webinar. It will be up on our website under the /Texas page and also on the resources page very soon. Thanks to Diana Drogeris behind the scenes. And I will say, see y'all very soon. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.